Thank you so much for joining us on Africa this morning. It is Table Talk session now. We've just finished up with the other segments. We're going to take on a conversation on the Sustainable Development Goals. And joining us to have this conversation is Ms. Carol Sherman, who is the Country Director of Plant International Kenya. Thank you so much for joining us. And we have two ladies who are ready to be the flag bearers of the young ladies' voice, especially when it comes to international issues. Here we have Jacinta Mwendo and we have Antonina Akoth. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
When we're discussing the Sustainable Development Goals, what exactly are we dawning into as a developing country?
Well, the Sustainable Development Goals are going to hopefully be adopted by the General Assembly later this week at the weekend. And it's been a long process to get here. In terms of 17 goals have been established that are the priorities for the world, in fact, to be able to move forward on development. They're very much coming from the Millennium Development Goals, the MDGs, that we've now finished 15 years. And we've made amazing successes, I think, both here in Kenya and also globally, in terms of being able to halve poverty, to sort of stem hunger, to be looking at maternal health, sanitation, clean water, access to clean water, and also gender parity, which we're talking about here at Plan International. But we haven't gone far enough, and we need to keep going. So the Sustainable Development Goals have moved from 8 to 17 priority goals. And this includes the sort of basic 5, which is very much about hunger, about eradicating, not just halving poverty, but just, you know, total zero poverty and hunger. It's looking at education, it's looking at health, and it's looking at gender parity.
One would actually argue that having 8 was more feasible than having 17.
Yes, and that is true. I think there has been a lot of discussion about is it too many to have 17? Some, I know prime ministers and people around the world have said that it's a very wide agenda. But I think with this agenda, it is very big. But this time, it's really all-encompassing. And I think different to the MDGs, the SDGs has been a very consultative process. And there's been a lot of input. And I know organizations like mine, Plan International, along with the girls here, we have been able to comment over the past 2 years on different drafts. And this time, it's looking, I suppose, more holistically, because climate change is up there, also protection of the land and the forests, as well as protecting our seas. And so we're really looking much more at a holistic approach to development, because one goes with the other. So yes, it is a big agenda, it's a sweeping agenda. It will all be in the implementation of the agenda that we can get that right. But I think as a place to start, these 17 goals really are a vision for us to leave no one behind and to be all-inclusive. And that is what the SDGs this time is about.
The strategy that has been adopted for the Sustainable Development Goals will mean that every country will be monitoring the success of their peer country to ensure that we are moving on in a very comprehensive manner. However, that is going to be established as we go to the end of the week. Even as we're touching on the Sustainable Development Goals, the specific aspect that Plan International is very focused on is the issue of gender parity. And that is the story that the young ladies will be sharing with us. But maybe you can give us a focus on why you picked on that as a main issue.
I think it is all-encompassing in some ways, gender parity. If we start from birth and parenting, we know that there's a lot of cultural practices, traditional practices that have favored the boy child much more. And this is here in Kenya as well. And that goes through to the opportunities that the boys get. Poverty is a huge factor when you actually only got a small income and you've got to say who goes to school in the family. Often it's been the boy child instead of the girl child. With the introduction of free primary school for all, we've seen much more gender parity and success, let's say, meeting the MDGs. But it's sort of, you start looking at a difference once you get into secondary school. So we have issues of education that we believe girls need to have every opportunity, because if you educate a child, that is the best way you're going to build a strong nation and a strong community. So we look at gender parity very much in terms of education, in terms of health, maternal health and so forth, but we're also looking at a lot of violence still, violence against children, but particularly girls, whether that is through traditional practices such as here in Kenya, we're looking at FGM and very such practices as early marriage, that is actually stopping girls actually having an education, putting them in the home, not giving them a chance to be able to make a good livelihood and career or further themselves to be able to contribute much more to the family and also to the community. But we're also looking at a lot of issues such as sexual violence, abuse, and domestic violence, which sometimes is seen as it's the way it is. And we also need to make sure that women have a voice, women get justice, women have every opportunity to go as far as they can and to reach their full potential and not be discriminated against because of their gender.
Jacinta, you have a very familiar story to some of the issues that have been pointed out by Ms. Sherman. Maybe you can start with your story so that people can understand why we're actually having you as an ambassador for Kenya going to the United Nations General Assembly in New York.
Okay, thank you for that opportunity. Yes, I'm going to start. When I used to live in Makueni County before I went to Kilifi County, my mom used to sell local brews as the only source of income. Yes, because yeah, that was the only source of income. So due to these men used to stay at our home till night, even 9, 10 p.m. they're still at home taking beer. So when I was preparing supper one day, one man came into the kitchen and tried to grab me from behind. And when he was trying to do the act, now my mom came in and rescued me. And this was not only the only time that was happening to me, but it had happened several times. It was not the only time. So I tried to explain to my mom what these men were doing to me, and she could not understand. She thought that I wanted to run away from home due to poverty in our home, but she could not understand me. So I tried to run home several times, but I could not make it. You know, I didn't have fare that could take me to Mombasa. So one day I explained to her this and she understood. So she called my sister who lived in Kilifi and she took me there where I was safe.
Maybe you can share with us how this had an impact on your studies, because when you're at home, it's an environment that can be a bit tricky because your mother is selling local brew. The men are at home until 10 p.m. You're coming from school, you're trying to do your homework. Maybe you can explain to the viewers so that they can understand what kind of challenges you're facing when you're living in such an environment.
Yes. First, like one day when this happened to me and the following day I was supposed to go to school, I could not even concentrate in school, just trying to remember what was happening to me at night. And so coming back home, it was not even a safe environment for me to study. I could not even concentrate on my studies. When I tried to study at night, because they are making a lot of noise, you know how men, when they are drunk, how they make noise, I could not even concentrate. So my results too were just going down and down and down. Yes.
Then we'll come to your story. And Antonina Akoth,
Yeah.
maybe you can share with us how you got yourself to convene among young ladies. There are 16 young women who have been picked under the Plan International Kenya agenda, and we can expound on that after we get Antonina's story.
Okay. My story, I've been living with my uncle after the death of my father. Then here with my uncle in Siaya County, he has taught us values. He has ensured that we are safe. We don't come home late. Then my uncle has also ensured that whenever there is an event or an opportunity gotten, he gives his siblings and also any child he lives with, he allows us to go and explore whatever we have. And so I am supported with an organization. It's called Ruma Women Development Group. So Ruma Women also gives children opportunity. I was chosen from Ruma Women to be a member of the Siaya County Children Assembly. Now from the assembly, that's where I became an advocate. Yeah, so I am an advocate in Bondo unit. I'm proud being an advocate, and that helps me a lot as long as I'm not undergoing all this so much suffering, but I can feel, because where we are staying in our community, many girls are getting pregnant, and it's not an issue to them. And also there are also parents who are sexually abusing these children. There is inadequate sanitary towels affecting them. There is the defilement and delayed justice, especially the scholars. When they are going to school, maybe the school is far from home and they're supposed to reach to school early before 7. So it will make them start the journey early, for example, even at 5 when it's still dark. So that's a problem and makes me feel that as long as I am at least comfortable than them in my home, I shouldn't sit down and wait for them to be injured. Yet we are the next generation. I am because she is, and she is because I am. So why do I enjoy while the other girl is suffering? That's why I'm very passionate about girls, and I want to work with BLAN and the county assembly to ensure that girls are comfortable in their lives, so that Kenya moves. Yeah.
And we succeed. Very impressive testimonies here of young ladies who you are working with at Plan International Kenya to ensure that the voice of young women is heard. Maybe you can share with us the process that you used to pick the 16 girls who you're working with, and even the 2 who are going to be representing Kenya in the UNGA conference in New York.
Yes, I can. They are very impressive, and they very articulate in what they want to say, not at just the national level, the regional level, and now the international level as well. A plan does work with children. It is a child rights organization. We are always looking for the well-being of children. So we work with children and we work with youths. And we have many different programs that we work with children in terms of mentorship, leadership, in the schools, facilitating the development of school clubs and the empowerment issues. So this is one of such program where some of the girls came in this program and sort of actually self-selected themselves in a way. And Antonina and Jacinta are part of a much bigger group, but this particular program is 16 girls, where the girls have selected themselves for these representatives to go to New York. In March, 2 other girls from the group of 16 went to New York for the Status of Women, the Commission of Status of Women, and were able to meet the Minister of Devolution and Planning as well as the First Lady in New York. So this is a fantastic experience for them in terms of being able to really stand out and hone their skills as leaders and representatives of their country, of their communities. But it's also much more. They are really not just 16 girls. They are actually at their homes, in their counties, in their villages, the communities, representing so many girls. So this is not just to Jacinta and Antonina. These are taking not only their stories, but the stories of their communities. So we do a lot of work, and one of the pieces of work we just did recently in August was to bring the 16 girls together. And they actually wrote a memorandum which they presented to the First Lady in New York, in Kenya, to take to New York and to get her support for girls' issues. And that was a wonderful moment where they had chosen the girls' safety and to talk about safety issues and to get the sign-on and buy-in from the leaders here in Kenya to really promote girls' safety. So the girls are working together. We're working with the girls as well in different programs, but this one in particular is focused on the Sustainable Development Goals, and also now really thinking about the implementation of these goals and how that will affect girls in their communities to see what they can do, to be able to talk about the SDGs, not just for it to be on paper, but to be an active participant in the development in the future.
Even as we're taking on the issues of girls to the international, to the national and then also international level, there are challenges that we have to jump over when you're looking at the cultural barriers that prevent having the voice of the young lady present at the table. Maybe you can share with us how you're navigating right from the regional level to the national and also international.
I think in terms of change and as you say, cultural practices or behaviours, it doesn't happen overnight. And I think the girls are challenged, and that is something that we talk about a lot in our sessions together in the clubs, about the sort of challenges that they are going to face, that we're all going to face as people advocate for change. But I think it's starting very early. I mean, for us in Plan, we have a whole variety of programs which go from very basic early childhood development, where we're actually talking with the young child, but also focusing on the parents and parenting skills. So right from the very start, working through our programs, whether it's with the girls and the boys, we're trying to actually have a dialogue and a discussion about some of these very tricky issues that some people hold on very firmly to beliefs. But I think in terms of step by step and different programs throughout the life cycle, we are reaching the parents, we are reaching the youth, and we're changing attitudes altogether. And I say we, not we as Plan, but I think as a community. And I think looking at harmful practices and to be able to, for instance, FGM is one point. It really is in some ways looking at, for some communities, a rite of passage for the girl and a way in for marriage. You know, but now there are other ways and alternative ways to go through and mark those life stages without having a harmful practice. It's also about gender-based violence. We've just heard the stories of defilement and attempted defilement. We have to also look at the parents' attitudes, and also get to the community to say these practices have to stop. And the girls are a voice, and they can say it straight out loud, and not to be a hidden under the table, and we don't talk about that. But now we do talk about
being
it.
able to combat them straight on.
Yes, and I think that having a more open and more transparent culture, I think people are getting much more behind the rights of girls. So I think it is slow. The girls have got a lot of challenges as they call for change. They are girl advocates, but I think it's not a combative type of process, but one that you start a dialogue. It is a dialogue that you take along the way, and change is occurring. And we're seeing here in Kenya, in the communities, that change is occurring, but there's so much more to do.
Jacinta, maybe you can share with us, even as, yes, you transitioned from Makueni to Kilifi, but as a young lady, there are challenges that you have faced even as you're marching on as an ambassador for young women, so that young ladies out there who might have a familiar story to yours might feel encouraged that every day, even as the challenges that you're facing can seem insurmountable or a little bit big, they are challenges that you're ready to take on. Share with us how you're navigating those challenges and what the challenges are.
Okay, some of the challenges are the issues of early marriages, and the defilement is still high. There is a high rate of defilement in Kilifi County. Some of how to control the rape cases and the early marriages. I've realized most of the girls, for example, in Kilifi County, the reason why they're dropping out of school is due to poverty. And we can tell the government to provide some amount of money to take these girls to school, because due to poverty, it has led them to get married early. Because their parents cannot afford to take them to school. Yes.
Maybe you can share with us, Antonina, you've given us a little brief aspect of some of the challenges that you're facing right from Siaya. How are you navigating them on a personal level? Because there are friends that you have seen who've been married off, there are friends that you have seen who have had children and have dropped out of school. How are you working around that environment so that you can keep the voice of those young ladies who are willing to stand and study strong?
Yeah. In my community, there are challenges, and the most challenge there is girls are not so much, they don't have that urge, they don't have that encouragement to struggle and do very well in academics, maybe because of poverty. And also another big problem affecting girls, there is low self-esteem. You find that girls of our age, 17, 16, 15, are having sex with the mature men. You see, as in that's because of peer pressure and poverty. They have to get some money. And also there is the disbursement of bursary. It's not very well. We find that maybe there is a poor girl somewhere. She needs help, maybe. She wants to go on with her academics, but because the method of disbursing bursary is not very good, she won't study, she won't go on well with her study. There is also unfair division of labor. you find that in the family level, they take it as in girls are meant for the house chores and boys are meant for example, herding and fetching water. And in a family where there are no kettle, so boys are free, they can learn well, while girls have that bulk of the family cause. Then challenge on my side as an advocate, it's really difficult to convince adolescents. As in, for example, you find in school, we as adolescents, we like those activities like we dance, we enjoy ourselves. And then you find in an activity whereby I'm coming to a group, I want to talk to them about being in adolescent stage, in connection with advocating for them. You teach them that you are not supposed to engage in sexual activities. You teach them how to make their lives better in case of any problem that they are experiencing, how to ensure that there is fair division of labor in their family. As it's difficult to convince adolescent girls. That's a challenge. Then another challenge, maybe when we are in school, we don't get to talk to the community very well. Maybe, but sometimes we do attend community events, for example, the Day of the African Child, but not so much often because it comes once in a year. So that's a major challenge to convince people to support girls. But then I have an idea. You know, this Kenya, as I have said, adolescents, girls like enjoying music. These road shows, I think these famous musicians like Size 8, Waire, I think they should just come together and have a road show, very big road show, but just based on advocacy, empowering girls. Let's encourage the self-esteem of girls. If I couldn't have the self-esteem, I couldn't even agree to speak to girls. Imagine I met a fellow student, but in a boys' school. I told her that I'm an advocate and I'm speaking for the girls. He says that that is nonsense. How can you speak for the girls? Is that a work to do? You see? They don't understand. So let us work together as Kenyans. Let us use things that adolescents, girls enjoy to teach them
about their rights.
Yeah.
Jacinta, what hopes do you have, even as you're going to be in New York representing the voice of young ladies from Kenya, and also it will be a familiar story to other African countries? What does that make you feel? What responsibility do you feel that holds for you?
I feel so proud, first representing the girls in New York. First, the hopes that I have, I hope that people will respect girls' rights and educate them, and know that an educated lady, when we educate ladies or girls in our country, we will develop our country. Yes.
Thank you so much for joining us, Jacinta, and thank you so much, Antonina. Even as we close the interview, Ms. Sherman, maybe you can share with us, even as we are approaching the point where the Sustainable Development Goals will now be a reality for every country, what do we need to take up, especially on a personal level, because these are goals that will be broken down to a level where every Kenyan should be able to monitor or even be part of the campaign. What exactly do we need to do to ensure that we are on a better footing rather than the case that was during the Millennium Development Goals?
Well, I think you've just said it. What do we, as all Kenyans in country, how do we participate? And I think that is something that we need to do. We need to be able to communicate at the county level, at the national county level, and through the villages, that this is, and break it down as to say, what are we going to achieve? To be able to talk about it, for the essays in school to be about the SDGs. So it's not something that is decided by politicians and like in New York,
leaders
but
on
it
an
really
international
is broken
front,
down. And it's broken down in national language, it's broken down so everybody understands, and children can write about it and talk at home about the families, and that it is part of community life. And I think for Plan International, international, and here Planning Kenya, this is what we want to be part of. We want to be part of being able to roll out implementation with the government, and to be able to support the government, the counties, different authorities, and the communities themselves to really aspire to the goals and have specific plans which can be monitored over time, to be able to monitor the progress and look at how we're going to really prioritize development and have the greatest participation in that development, leaving no one behind. So for us, I think that is something that we're very much looking forward to. We've had a lot of inputs into the goals. There are 17, it's a huge agenda, but we certainly now are looking forward to taking that agenda, breaking it down into pieces, easily monitorable pieces, and really having a rollout that people actually buy into.
This is the beginning of a conversation that will be one, hopefully, the world will be able to take on. And if the next generation are already up on board on it, of course, the next generation will be able to own the agenda on a stronger footing. Thank you so much for joining us, ladies. You are an inspiration to other young women in the country. And also, it will be the case when you present the case of issues affecting young ladies on the international front through the UNGA summit that is in New York. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much for joining us, Ms. Sherman. It was a pleasure to get the vision that is behind empowering young women and ensuring the sustainable development goals are goals that are reachable, especially for young women. Thank you so much for joining us. That was our conversation on Table Talk today on Africa This Morning. From the team and myself, enjoy the rest of your viewing.